So, hi, I'm Nathan. I'm with the Department of Geology and Geography.
I'm Jesse. I'm also with the Department of Geology and Geography at UNC Pembroke.
Is
Is
that
that
where
where
we're
we
at?
are? Yeah, apparently.
I'm at home, but okay.
Uh, and this week we're talking about story maps.
Story map.
So
What's your
what's
story?
that's exactly right. What is your story? What since we're talking about them, we're gonna make a story. What's our story?
Our story for our map
Yeah,
for this. Well, I just got the game, the PS4 game of Ghost of Tsunami. No,
Tsushima.
Tsushima. And I was talking to my son about it, and he was wondering if the Japanese had not, I'm sorry, the Mongols had actually ever invaded Japan. So when I was looking it up, I found out that this little island truly existed, which surprised me. I figured it was a fictional place made up by the creators of the game. So I thought it'd be interesting to sort of tie in some of the places from the game in with anything that might still exist or might exist on the island itself.
We're making a map. We're making a map of the island of Tsushima. We're looking at real world places, game places where some of those overlap, and we're doing it in Esri's story map. So again, it's another example of how we can do these type of things using our site license that we have. So the first thing I wanted to show you is that we went through and made a quick map of, or a quick data set that we could use for our map. And here you can see with this Excel document that we have various locations. And for each of these locations, we have the latitude and longitude and whatever other columns we wanted to create. You know, we can keep going through and creating whatever columns we want.
Yeah, if you're wondering where we got the latitude and longitude, we got it off of Google Earth.
We cheated and just did the simple way of going to Google Maps. So we
Google
went
Maps,
to a
yeah.
location. Whenever you click on a location, you'll notice that the latitude and longitude do show up in your location that you've clicked on.
Why don't you point it out there up in the bar, the decimal degrees up at
So
the top.
if you
Yeah,
click on it,
there. Okay.
it'll also show up in the search box. So if you want to be able to copy it instead of typing it, and make sure to use decimal degrees, not degrees, minutes, and seconds. Esri software, and everybody will thank you for it because we are not on a boat in the middle of the 1400s. So decimal degrees is the way to go. Yeah, here's the map in Google Maps of the island of Tsushima. We're just off the coast of Fukuoka. If you're on the South Island in Japan, the South Big Island, the third largest island. And then we're just across from Busan. So basically we're right between Busan and Fukuoka, between Korea and Japan, as you were pointing out.
Yep.
And then we have this map, which is the artistic version that the game developers see the world as, right?
Yep.
So
They simplified it a little bit.
they did. They made a larger bay in some places. So our Excel document is all on the South Island. All these points are in the real world on the South Island. And we'll see how that works out in just a second. So we are going to eventually create this story map. And so a story map is just a map and a story and pictures and videos and audio and anything else you want to bring together to be able to convey an idea. And in this case, you can see that we're using an image of the game map in the background. A quote from Nate to kick us off, the trailer for the game. A map where we're comparing the real world map and the game map. And a map that allows us to go through and look at various locations that are in the real world and part of the game. So that's what we're creating, so that you know where we're going at the end. To do all of this, we're using ArcGIS Online and Story Maps. And the first thing we need to do is start With what? What is it we need to get started, Mr. Philippi?
I don't know. I was.
Well, there's two options: a story or a map.
Oh, okay. I guess
So which one do you want to start with?
guess we need our map.
Okay, we also could have started with a story because we did. We went through and outlined everything that we want to talk about. So arguably, we also started with our story.
What's easier? Is it easier to set up your story outline first and then go back and get your maps and pictures, or?
Storyboarding is huge. Having in mind whether you're creating a PowerPoint, a class presentation, a short video, anything you're doing, having an idea of what you want that to be is always going to help you in the end. So even if you're creating a map, you're generally going to start by thinking, okay, well, what am I going to say with this map and what kind of data do I need to support that map? So yeah, having the story a lot of times, or most of the time, is going to be, in my preference, the way to start, as opposed to just throwing things and seeing if they stick. Because whenever I do that, I end up recording and then re-recording and then re-recording, and then, yeah, many hours later, I finally get to what I could have had if I had just planned a little bit more. So, with our CSV file, these are our locations, and if we want to be able to share our locations via a map, it's very hard to do that. We take our CSV file and we drop it into ArcMap.
No, this is ArcMap Online, right?
Yep, this is, ArcGIS Online.
ArcGIS Online.
You're correct. Correct for calling me out on that one.
Well, if you tried it on ArcMap, it wouldn't work.
Actually, it will. ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro now, whenever you drop a CSV file on them, they should be able to create a map for you.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to try it right now, though. So yeah, we have our points now. These points that you see on here, these are the points that were in our Excel document. And so that's all it took. So very, very hard. So we can go through and use our attributes that we had to change the way that they look. We can go in and change our symbols so they can be bigger, smaller, different shapes. We can change the colors. We can change more or less anything. So we have a few different items here as part of this. We can also change what our base map looks like. So if we want to see a modern imagery base map and get rid of all the labels, we can do that as well. So we've created a map. We've added some points to it. And these points we could create on our own whenever we get to the story map, but this is just to make it a little bit easier so we don't have to search for these. So I'm going to call it Tsushima map. And I've been using Tsushima as my tag for all of this project. And it's in my Tsushima folder. And we have a map. So that's our starting point. So what is it that we want to kind of show today?
I guess the idea was to see what corresponded between the game and actual places on the island, at least the southern island.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have lots of tools that we can utilize. I, of course, have given myself access to all the tools. So yours, if you do have an account, won't be quite as full as this one, but you should have story maps as well as a number of the others. So
Yeah,
again, we've already created one.
This is something that Esri has been pushing for a long time.
Yep. And they do keep getting better and more feature-rich as we go through. So this is the one I showed you earlier, the one we already created, but
So how do you
want to...
I was just going to ask, how do you create a new story? Or you just did it?
You click on the button.
Yep.
So what do we want to call this today? Stick with the same name?
Sure. Keep it simple.
Well, we're gonna change it because we said something else just a second ago that made me think there's a better name for it.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Let me go over here to where I have your text, and so I can just copy and paste things instead of worrying about whether I type them correctly. So there we go. We have our heading. We can leave this nice topo look, but again, we want to use things that are a little bit more relevant to the game. And we have a number of images. We're going to use the map that the game is utilizing. We're going to click Add. It's going to come in. If we want to change which portion of the map we want to see, we can drag this around, and in theory, as we drag that around, it's going to focus on different portions of the map. Since we, of course, are focusing on the southern portion of the map and the island, and by the way, you can see what it's going to look like in this little screen to the right. And we should, of course, for accommodation purposes, from game, provide alternative text. And so there we go. That's all we have right now, but it's a place to start.
Yeah.
So the next thing we had was a little bit of text, which came from a quick email that I was sent. So there we go. We have a little text. And as you see, each time we have a plus sign. Now we're going to go in and we're going to include a video. Now I don't want to upload the video. I want to embed it because it's coming from YouTube. So I've gone to YouTube, and I'll do this real quick here. Let me close these other tabs. And I can grab the share code, the embed code, from YouTube.
What's the difference between embedding and sharing?
Well, you use the share to get to the embed code. And the embed code is going to give you an iframe. And now that iframe is in our story map.
Okay.
Now, again, we want to talk about maps, so we're going to add a map. So again, we want to be able to compare the map with modern imagery to the game map. So we want to be able to swipe back and forth between them. So I created a map beforehand that had that information in it. Let's see, place map. So here's the one we just created with our points. And here is the one I created that has the game map in it. We're going to place that. Now what the software does is takes advantage of shared coordinates between the two sides so that as you move one, the other's going to move as well. And we have this swipe tool in the middle that allows us to swipe back and forth to see between the two maps.
Neat.
So use the tool to swipe between the between the real world and game world. Okay, so we have a header, some text, video, we have a map. And then the last part, if you remember, is a map where we're looking at different aspects of what's going on around the area. And so we're basically taking a guided tour of the game world. And we're going to do that using the map. We could have the map as the focus, like we're going to do, or we can have the map be what's on the side and have the media be the focus, but we're going to focus on the map because, well, we're geographers and we like the map. So how are we doing so far? Any questions? Any thoughts?
No.
This was your map. I'm doing all the work.
I know, but I found all the stuff. So
I know. I know. That's why I'm like, why aren't you talking? So,
Because you're doing such a good job. So this has me confused. Where I don't even know where I'd start with this.
so we have a lot of different things going on here. All of this is one new thing. If we scroll up, we'll get back to the rest of the story map. So this
Oh,
is our
okay.
guided story embedded within the story map. And there's a few things we can do with that, but the one that we're going to focus on first is the map settings. Now, there are a lot of base maps, as we've seen before, that we can use, but the reason that I brought points in earlier is so that we can use them here. So I'm going to browse more maps and use the map that we created earlier. So that gives us the map, and as we zoom in over here, we can see that our points are there. And we're going to use those to
Oh, yeah.
attach locations, attach media to them. So we want to go through, and we're going to start with, where's my Excel document? The Banshoen Temple, I guess. So whoops, Banshoen Temple. And I'm going to add my location by clicking Add Location down here. That's going to bring up a map. We're going to zoom into that area between Japan and Korea, find our locations, and I already know the temple is here because we, of course, created that. So since we're adding a location, as you can see, it has crosshairs and click to add tour point. So I'm just going to click that right on top of that existing point and say Add Location. I'm going to add my image. And for this one, we had this great set of stairs that takes you up to the temple. Or we could also use images such as the temple itself. So I'm going to have this set of stairs, but I'm actually going to add another picture so I can click plus at the top and browse, and here's the temple itself. And since the temple is also located at a castle, we also have an image of the Kanaishi Castle and gardens. And so as you can see, we have the 3 dots and the arrows that allow us to go from the stairs that will take us up to the temple, which is also at the castle. So all that in one location. Excuse me. Okay, so that's our first location.
Simple.
We're going to go in and we're going to choose our next location. Oops. I forgot to add a next point. So you come over here to New Slide. This green button in the bottom right hand corner. That's going to create a new location. Then I can add that location. So I was in the wrong place a second ago. Apparently my bandwidth today is having issues. So here's my second location. I'm going to add that location and try to figure out why my map, there we go. My map should be at that scale, and yet it's not. So we're having technical issues, and I'm not sure why it's causing that problem. But that was the Golden Temple that I selected.
No.
That wasn't the Golden Temple I selected?
That was a fishing village that you selected.
Uh-oh.
Golden Temple is in the middle.
Oh, okay. I thought I did the one up here.
No.
So yes, that's in the game known as Azumo, or in real world, Azumora Bay.
Yep.
So are we going with, let's go with the real world name, Azumora. And we'll add the image from Azumora, or Azumo. Again, we have a game image here from Azumo, And I also have an image from the real world Azamora. A little less epic, but I mean,
Looks just like it.
it's still a beautiful landscape.
It
And,
is.
it is a few hundred years difference. The game takes place in the 1200s.
Yeah.
This is, of course, a modern image. Let's go ahead and add another location.
Seems like a really pretty island. When I was looking up information on it, about 90% of it is all forest and mountains, as you can see from that topographic satellite image there.
Yeah, it's one of the big issues in Japan. You have a population that is almost 90% urban, and lots of young people are moving away from their family homes, and so you have a lot of towns that are not quite to the point of being abandoned, but it's a similar issue, of course, that we face in the U.S., where we see a lot of loss of businesses downtowns, and some of the smaller towns basically being vacated. That's a long-term issue. So
Tsushima, the capital of the islands, is the largest city, I believe.
I can't speak to that. Not been there. Though, since the next time I go to Japan, I'm planning on going to Fukuoka. I'm going to see if there's a ferry out to Tsushima from there.
Huh. It'd be fun. I think it's only 50 miles from the coast.
Yeah, so that would be a quick trip. Let's see, what's another place we can...
So that Golden Temple doesn't exist. I think we zoomed in on that spot. So that's a fictional portion of the game, and if you were to zoom in on that number 3, all you'd see is, I think it's just a farm, isn't it? Wasn't it on top of that mountain? Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So of course, there has to be some artistic license to make the game interesting.
Of course.
Which they do a great job. If you don't mind me plugging the PS4 game, it's a really beautiful game. Keeps your attention.
Keep talking. I'm just clicking on images.
Asian there.
Do you remember what the name of the bay was? Where?
I want to say Kazama.
I could, of course, turn on the labels, but I'm just going to say Mongol invasion. How's that?
There you go. Keep it simple.
Of course, I'm only giving these titles. You can add description and text to each of these as well.
Yeah, so if you visited these places, as you can see, it says continue your story optional underneath each of those titles. So you could type in what you did, what you saw, what you experienced and smelled, and if you ate something interesting, to make a note of it there to share with other people. Or data, if you wanted to give a report about
about cats. It's a great report, I'm telling you.
About what statistical information is what I'm trying to say. You can add it there at the bottom. Make it more interesting presentation.
Whatever you want to. And again, we're putting this at the bottom of our map because it's just a good way to end it. You don't want to have something big that's taking up the whole screen and then have something below it, because people may not make it past this tour map. So we gave all of our kind of leading information coming in through here, fun parts that are interactive, and then of course that last interactive portion where you can watch as these go through. I'm going to try this. I'm going to use this custom zoom level. And that should, there we go.
Yeah, and then you should be able to click on each of those spots, and those will pop up. And then there's different ways that you can present those slides too, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is just one template. There's lots of other ways to do this. And there's training courses on learn.esri.com that show you how to do different aspects. And there are whole new ways that they rolled out at the beginning of the month that, we haven't even had a chance to play with yet. So ArcGIS Online is awesome because they update it regularly. The downside is sometimes they update things that you're using in the middle of a semester. So then you have to figure out the changes and let your students know what the changes were. Now, of course, this isn't necessarily the best look for something like the game. So we can go back to our map settings because, of course, I was using this for the locations of these pins. We can go back and choose something that is a little less in your face. If you like something that's a little darker, we can go with one of the dark themes. Again, if you do like imagery as your base, there's various image options. So you don't, I used the one that we created as the base map, so it would have the points. Don't need those anymore because now we have these points that are part of the map. But of course, I can also choose another one of our own maps so that we have the ability to see this within the game environment. And so we do that. Now suddenly this changes and swipes around. Now if I were to do this, I would extend this background in reality, but for our purposes of demonstration, there you go.
Neat.
And you can continue to scroll down. And if you do want to just jump from place to place, you can do that as well instead of just scrolling down, which I'm doing. And we could continue the story if you wanted to add your references and those type of things. There's spaces for that at the bottom as well. Just to go through real quick, we have text submissions, we have image, video, audio, anything that's an embeddable web page, which basically you can embed any web page in an iframe if you know how to. So you can embed anything really. And then the 4 types of maps, we use 2 of them, the swipe and the guided tour. But we have the sidecar, which allows for information to be scrolling over on the left-hand side or right. You can move where it's docked in association with your media or your map. And then the last one was the newest, the slideshow, which, as far as I can tell, I haven't really used it yet, works more or less the same way as what we were using, but gives you the ability to combine some aspects of the other 3. So it's not necessarily doing it one way or the other, but you can begin to combine things a little bit. And I'm going to delete that.
So then when this is all done, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are my publishing options? How can I share this with other people, or if I wanted to use it in a class or something like that?
Once you have all your content in, you can go through and make sure that you're happy with your design. You can change how your cover looks, from having it overlaid like we did to the other options. You can add or remove navigation from your maps, whether or not you want credits to be seen. You can change the colors of how things work, even down to your fonts. And if you have a logo, you can upload that if you want. So that's under design. Preview, of course, gives you a chance to preview on not just a desktop. So this is what it would look like on, say, a laptop screen or a desktop screen, but also on a tablet. So as you can see, a little bit different than what you would get from what we were seeing when we were building it, or even a phone, to make sure that everything that you've created is going to work in the way that you expect it to. And if not, then you can go through and change it. And you can also, if you're someone like myself who prefers our phones in landscape, see what it would look like that way as well.
Oh, neat.
in reality, this actually works better in portrait because the map gets cut down to a sliver, but that's a separate thing. So once we finish our preview, we can go back to edit. And this last box over here, before we're not going to worry about over here with the drop down, but we can go through and publish. Right now, it's only for me. If I want to make it available to everybody in the organization, I can click this, or I can go through and set it to be specific groups. We have a lot of groups. If you have a class or something like that, a project group with students that you're working with, we can create a group, or you can create a group and include those members that you want to be able to have access to it. And then, of course, once you're ready to release it to the world, you can click on everyone. Since this was just for us to share with you guys, we didn't check for copyright on a lot of these things, so we're not releasing it out to the public.
So if you click that everyone radio button, where does it go? How do people get to it? Do they have to log into Esri to?
No, you just provide a link to it, and they can get to it. If you do have map layers and those type of things that are not shared with the same level, it'll prompt you to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and share these with the organization. Okay, it's published. So now I can use this link right here. I'll bring up another browser. Hopefully there's nothing weird in it. Nope, just a front page. Huh, weird.
Oh, so you can go to Canvas and you can put that in as a URL?
Yes. So whenever I have my story maps in Canvas, you just take that and embed it. Again, your story map, as well as, so you can embed things in the story map, but you can also embed your story map in other things. So for instance, in my World Regional Geography classes, I have story maps embedded in each of the chapters, each of the regions that we talk about. So this is just a story map that's embedded within Canvas. And you can see that this is more of a tab-based story map where it's looking at the same location, just at different layers as we go across. So instead of having the students turn on and off, which isn't necessarily intuitive until you get used to using the software, just having them click on tabs is much more intuitive from a web perspective.
Very cool.
And so I could do the exact same thing with what we just created, take it and embed it into anywhere I wanted to.
Nice.
So yes, I couldn't bring that up in the other browser because I had not shared it with everyone. So I'm going to really quick just share it with everyone and then unshare it later on. So updating all the permission on those. I have to remember to turn permissions off on all those. And there we go. So I'm not logged in. I can see these things as I want to. Any thoughts? Questions? Comments?
Yeah, a nice tool. I guess after some practice, it would become relatively easy to throw together a quick project like that.
Yeah, and one thing, whenever we brought in the points at the very beginning, that was to make it a little bit easier on myself because that's the way I prefer to do it. But if you do have students who just want to create a map and they have a general idea of where their locations are, I'm just going to go back to guided tour real quick. That, they can zoom into the location they want to create a point and create that point. So, if we wanted someone to create a story map of my trip across campus, they could click on Old Main where I generally begin. And I'm going to add another location. And nowadays, all of my classes are in a building that's not showing up right now. Let's see, right here.
There, it's a little rectangle. Yeah.
That's a shed out behind the building.
Really?
So yeah.
Oh, okay.
The building. Yeah, the building is just not there. So the door's over here, but yeah, that's still in the building. It's kind of odd. How did I convince that? I guess I used the custom zoom level last time. Here we go. So zoom from one end of campus to the other. And so I didn't have any points other than my knowledge of the location. So if you have students who want to create a map, they don't need to go through and create a CSV file first. But if there are specific locations and they do know those coordinates, it's the much faster way to do it. And again, this is just one way of doing it. There's others where you can actually use those locations as part of your map generation as well.
Nice. So you could either do all of that just from the story maps, or you recommend making your maps on GIS online first and then importing them?
Yeah, I mean, any of those work.
I suppose if you were using specific data, census data or something like that, it'd be easier to do it online.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes and no. This is where, whether we're talking about ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, and I'm going to use Pro just because it's a little bit, it was built to work with ArcGIS Online, but you can do the exact same thing in ArcMap, where you can create a map and then publish that. And in fact, the Tsushima map, which apparently it's going to take a little bit of time to load, I guess. Oh, it's not there. So I'm going to add that Tsushima data in Tsushima 1. There we go. So whenever we look at this, I brought it into ArcGIS Online, or sorry, ArcGIS Pro. I got rid of the layers I didn't want to push out in that particular case. And I went to share. And share as, I could share it as a web map, or in this case I shared it as a web layer because I was just worried about that one layer. So you could go through, create a map here, and publish that whole map to ArcGIS Online, and then bring the map that you built in ArcGIS Pro, upload it to ArcGIS Online, bring that into a story map. So if you are doing things with GIS data, and you're more comfortable working in GIS, if you need the strength and power of the analysis or the statistics or the query capabilities that are still better in the desktop software than they are in the online, you can start in desktop and end up with a great story map.
All right. Neat tool.
Okay. Any parting thoughts as we round out our partial summer, or month at least, of, well, almost 2 months now, because this is the 8th episode.
Yeah.
Any thoughts as we round things out, wrap them up?
No, I guess if anybody has any questions or suggestions for anything that they would like to see, they feel free to send you an email asking. We could do a video on it, but I guess other than that, it was fun.
Okay, so as suggested, we might be back at some point in time. We don't know.
Never know.
If we have time, we will. If we don't, we won't. But if there are requests, then we may come back. The only requests we did have were for story maps, and so we made sure to wrap up the summer with that. And again, with all of these, we're just scratching the surface. We're just putting out there very basic ideas, just giving you a quick example, but there's so much more depth, especially as we get into analysis, statistics, and cartography. You know, we really didn't really show the depth of what we can do cartographically and visually with these. And this is just one product. There's open source projects that are out there. Quantum GIS is a great one if you're on Mac. That's your go-to, most likely. There's lots of online opportunities. You know, we're using ArcGIS Online, but there are other products out there that allows us to do analysis or share maps, depending on what you want to do online. So don't think that we're going into any depth whatsoever this summer.
Yeah.
We're really just skimming along the surface.
Okay. I guess that's all I've got to say.
Okay. And I've probably said too much this summer already.
No, you did good.
Oh, okay. I wasn't looking for approval, but thank you for this scratch behind the ear.
Mm-hmm.
Bye,
Don't need
folks.
to boost your ego anymore.
No need to what?
Don't need to boost your ego anymore.
No. It really doesn't need it.